Hey there everyone, Ramesh here, back again with another video. In this video I am going to suggest you what are the important topics you need to focus in Java, what are the frameworks, tools that you need to know to work on Java projects as a beginner. Alright, let's get started. First we'll see the Java and then we'll move to advanced Java and then we'll see the Spring ecosystem and then we'll see the databases and testing and then important Java libraries. Alright, let's begin with core Java. Well, whenever you learn any programming language, you should know the syntax of that programming language, isn't it? So similarly, if you want to learn Java, you should know the syntax of Java first. Okay, just familiarize syntax of Java and then go ahead and learn Java basics like primitive data types, loops. Okay, in loops you can learn for loop, while, do while, for each loop. Okay, just get familiar with all these loops and then learn array and then strings. Okay, so go ahead and learn all the Java basics first. Once you are familiar with Java basics, then go ahead and learn OOPS concepts. Well, OOPS concepts are very important. Okay, and in real-time Java project development we use OOPS concepts a lot. Okay, go ahead and learn OOPS concepts such as object, class, abstraction, inheritance, encapsulation, polymorphism. So these are the basic OOPS concepts. You can also learn the advanced OOPS concepts like composition, association, cohesion, coupling, delegation. So these are the few advanced OOPS concepts. Alright, once you are familiar with OOPS concepts, then go ahead and learn collections and generics. Well, collections framework is very important, guys. In real-time project development, we use a collections framework a lot. Basically, we use collections to store and group the data elements. The commonly used collections classes like array list, linked list, and hash set, hash map, linked hash map. So these are the commonly used collection classes that we frequently use in a real-time Java project development. And also learn the generics. Well, whenever we use the collection classes, then we also use the generics for type safety. Okay, so go ahead and learn collections and generics. Well, next learn the exception handling. Well, exception handling is very important. Whenever you develop the real-time Java project, you need to handle the exceptions and errors. Okay, just go ahead and learn how to handle exceptions in Java, how to throw the exception, how to create the custom exception, how to catch the exception. Okay, so learn all these exception handling basics. And next you need to learn the multi-threading. Well, multi-threading is very important concept in Java. Okay, if you want to improve the performance of your program or your application, you have to use a multi-threading. Alright, and so go ahead and learn how to create a threads using thread class, runnable interface, how to communicate between threads, okay, how to kill the thread. Alright, so go ahead and learn all these basic threading concepts. Well, next you need to learn functional programming in Java. Java 8 basically introduced the functional programming in Java. Well, you know the Java 8 features like lambda expression, functional interfaces, stream APIs, optional class. All these Java 8 features introduce the functional programming in Java. Okay, so go ahead and learn Java 8 features like lambda expressions, functional interfaces, stream APIs, optional class. Okay, so go ahead and learn all these Java 8 features so that you will learn how to do functional programming in Java and how to use these Java 8 features to perform functional programming in your real-time Java project development. Next, you can go ahead and learn file input-output concepts in Java. Well, sometimes we have a requirement to read different files, or sometimes we have a requirement to write some content to the existing file. Okay, in that case you need to use file input output classes in Java. Okay, so go ahead and learn how to read the file, how to create the file, how to write the file, okay, how to delete the file, how to create the directory, how to delete the directory. So go ahead and learn all these concepts. Okay, next you need to learn the data structures and algorithms. Well, data structures and algorithms are building blocks of any programming language, right? So go ahead and learn all the data structures and algorithms. So these will help you to improve the performance of your Java program or your Java application. If you know what are the important data structures and in which cases you have to use which data structure, then that will improve the performance of your Java program. Well, go ahead and learn all these Java important topics. Well, next move to the IDEs. Well, whenever you want to develop the real-time project and if you want to improve your productivity and save the time, then you have to use the IDEs. Well, in Java, you can see we have Eclipse and IntelliJ IDEA. Well, these are the two very popular IDEs that we can use to develop the Java projects. Okay, you can use either Eclipse or IntelliJ IDEA. Well, recently developers also prefer using VS Code IDE to develop the Java projects. But I am going to suggest you initially you can use either Eclipse or IntelliJ IDEA to develop the Java projects. Okay. Now let's move to the advanced Java. Well, in advanced Java, you need to learn JDBC, Servlet, JPA, JAX-RS, design patterns, and TimeLeap. Well, you need to learn JDBC because JDBC is the standard API that we can use to connect our Java application with the database. Okay, and next, Servlet. Well, here I have mentioned Servlet because whenever you work on Spring MUC web applications, then you need to know about the servlets because Spring MUC is built using servlets, and you will heard about dispatcher servlet in Spring MUC. Basically, dispatcher servlet is nothing but a servlet. In order to understand the dispatcher servlet internals and its internal working mechanism, then you need to learn servlet basics. Okay, that's why I have mentioned servlet over here. So go ahead and learn servlet basics like how to create a servlet, servlet lifecycle methods, how to create a web page using servlet, how to handle the request using servlet. So go ahead and learn all these servlet basics. Next, JPA. So JPA stands for Java Persistence API, and it is again a standard Java specification that we can use to map a Java object into a database table. Okay, so we can use a JPA to directly map our Java object into a database table, and JPA basically provides mappings like one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many. All right, so these are the very important topics you need to learn in JPA, and JPA is just a specification, and there are a lot of implementations are available. For example, Hibernate, Eclipse Link. Okay, so these are the two popular implementations of JPA API. Well, next is JAX-RS. Well, JAX-RS is again the standard API available in Java that we can use to develop the RESTful web services. And JAX-RS is just the standard API or the specification, and there are a lot of implementations are available in Java. For example, Jersey REST framework, REST EG. So these are the two popular implementations of JAX-RS. Well, next, design patterns. Well, basically we use the design patterns a lot in real-time project development. Okay, so go ahead and learn all the commonly used design patterns. For example, singleton design pattern, factory design pattern, builder design pattern, decorator design pattern, strategy design pattern, template design pattern. Okay, so all these are the commonly used design pattern that you can use, and also learn the architecture design pattern like MUC design pattern, 3-layer architecture design pattern. Alright, so go ahead and learn all these commonly used design patterns in real-time project development. Next, TimeLeap. Well, here I have mentioned TimeLeap because whenever we develop the Spring MUC project, we use the TimeLeap as a view layer. Okay, we can use also the JSP, but JSP is something outdated, so most of the developers prefer using TimeLeap as a view layer in a Spring MUC project. That's why I have mentioned TimeLeap over here. Next, we have a build tools. Well, whenever we develop the real-time Java project, we use a build tools. Okay, in Java we have Maven and Gradle. So these are the two very popular build tools available in Java. Alright, so these build tools we use to build the Java project and also manage the dependencies. Alright, so go ahead and learn these build tools. Well, I frequently use Maven and sometimes I use Gradle, but Maven is pretty handy and simple for me. So initially you can go ahead and learn Maven as a build tool and dependency management tool, and based on the requirement you can use Gradle as well. Alright, so go ahead and learn about these build tools. Next comes to Java EE frameworks. Well, in Java we have Spring Framework and Hibernate Framework. So these are the two very popular Java WE frameworks. Alright, well, first let's take a look at Spring Framework ecosystem. Well, Spring Framework provides a lot of modules and we use Spring modules based on the requirement. And Spring Framework has modules, popular modules like Spring Core, Spring Security, Spring AOP, Spring MUC, Spring Data JPA, Spring Boot, Spring Cloud. So these are the commonly used Spring Framework modules, and if you want to learn Spring Framework, then you can focus on these Spring modules. Well, let's take a look at these important Spring modules one by one. Well, in Spring Core module, you need to learn these important topics like dependency injection and what are the different types of dependency injection, like constructor based dependency injection and setter based dependency injection. So go ahead and learn dependency injection. And IOC. Well, Spring IOC is a very important concept. Okay, and go ahead and learn application context bin factory. So these are the Spring IOC containers, right? Next, learn Spring beans. Well, learn how to create a Spring beans and what are the Spring bean scopes available and what is the default Spring bean scope. Okay, so go ahead and learn all these Spring bean basic concepts. Next, learn Spring configuration styles. Well, basically Spring offers different configuration styles like XML configuration, Java based configuration and annotation configuration. Well, most of the developers prefer using Spring Java based configuration. Okay, so no one uses the XML configuration now. Most of the developers prefer using Java based configuration. So go ahead and familiar with Spring Java based configuration style. Well, once you learn Spring Core fundamentals, then go ahead and learn Spring Security. Well, Spring Security is basically a de facto standard to secure your web applications and RESTful APIs in Java. Alright, and Spring Security provides out-of-the-box implementation for authentication and authorization. Alright, and also learn JWT token based authentication. Okay, so Spring Security is very important, guys, to secure your web applications and RESTful web services. So go ahead and learn Spring Security. Well, next, learn Spring AOP, that is Spring Aspect Oriented Programming. Well, we don't use Spring AOP a lot in our Spring based applications, but Spring Framework internally uses Spring AOP a lot, for example for transactions and logging. Okay, so go ahead and get familiar with Spring AOP concepts. Next, learn Spring MVC. Well, Spring MVC is very important framework. So whenever you want to develop web application or RESTful APIs, you have to use Spring MVC framework, because Spring MVC is designed based on the MVC design pattern. Okay, and Spring MVC is very popular in Java to develop web applications as well as RESTful web services. Next, you need to learn Spring Data JPA. So Spring Data JPA basically we use to develop the repository layer or the DAO layer, and we use Spring Data JPA to reduce a lot of boilerplate code that is required to develop the DAO layer. Okay, so Spring Data JPA, it reduces a lot of boilerplate code. We can also use JPA and Hibernate, but Spring team has introduced Spring Data JPA module to reduce the boilerplate code. Well, next, learn Spring Boot. Well, Spring Boot is very popular portfolio project in a Spring Framework, and Spring Boot is developed on top of Spring Framework to address the configuration problem. Well, if we develop the Spring project using Spring Framework without Spring Boot, then we need to write a lot of configuration. Okay, that's why Spring team has introduced Spring Boot module or Spring Boot project to address the problem of the configuration. So basically we can use Spring Boot to reduce a lot of boilerplate configuration, because Spring Boot provides auto configuration feature, and it will also provide embedded servers, actuators. Okay, and it will basically provides a rapid application development, because we can use Spring Boot to develop Spring based applications very faster. Well, sometime you may have a question like, can I learn Spring Boot directly without learning all these Spring modules? Of course, you can learn Spring Boot directly, because Spring Boot internally uses all these Spring modules. Okay, so Spring Boot internally uses all these Spring module libraries. Okay, Spring Boot is not a different framework. Spring Boot is just an extension of Spring framework, and it internally uses all these Spring module libraries. Okay, and if you have a basic idea of these Spring modules, then it will be very easy for you to develop Spring Boot applications. Alright, so before learning Spring Boot, at least you learn Spring core basics like dependency injection, Spring IOC, Spring Bean, Spring configuration styles, all these stuff. And then you can learn Spring Boot. Along with that, you can learn Spring Security, AOP, MUC, Spring Data, GPA. Alright, so just make sure that Spring Boot is a very popular and demanding framework nowadays. So you have to learn Spring Boot as a Java developer. Well, next is Spring Cloud. Well, if you want to develop the microservices in Java, then you can go ahead and learn Spring Boot and Spring Cloud. Well, Spring Boot and Spring Cloud is a great combination to develop the microservices in Java. Alright, and yeah, so microservices is again a complex topic. So as a beginner, you can just focus on developing Spring based applications using these modules. Don't focus on Spring Cloud. Once you are familiar with developing Spring based applications, then based on the requirement, you can go ahead and learn Spring Cloud to develop the microservices. Alright, so this is about Spring framework, and these are the important modules in the Spring framework that you need to focus on. Next, we have Hibernate framework. Well, Spring Data JPA module in Spring framework, it internally uses Hibernate as a JPA provider, and it is good to have a basic understanding of Hibernate framework. Alright, so go ahead and learn Hibernate ORM framework fundamentals and basics. Okay, for example, you can learn the mappings like one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many, and learn how to create the primary keys, how to map object to the relational database table. Okay, so go ahead and learn all these Hibernate ORM framework basics. So Spring framework and Hibernate framework, so these are the very popular Java EE frameworks in Java. So as a beginner, you have to learn Spring framework and Hibernate framework. Well, let's take a look at next important topics that you need to know. You should know these essential skills, that is Git and SQL. Well, Git is a very popular version control system, and most of the IT companies prefer using Git as a version control system. So as a Java developer, you should know about Git. Okay, so go ahead and learn Git fundamentals and basics. Alright, next learn SQL. Well, if you want to connect your Java application with a database, and if you want to query database in Java application, then you need to know about the SQL, right? So just have a good understanding of SQL so that you will improve the performance of your application or a database queries. Okay, so go ahead and learn these two important essential skills as a Java programmer. Next, as a Java programmer, you should know also about the databases. Well, here I have listed a few of the important RDBMS and NoSQL databases. Like you should know about these commonly used RDBMS like MySQL, PostgreSQL, Oracle, and MS SQL. So these are the frequently used RDBMS databases. So as a Java programmer, you should be familiar with these databases. Okay, and here I have mentioned NoSQL databases like MongoDB and Cassandra. Next, unit testing and integration testing. Well, unit testing and integration testing is also a very important part of the Java project development phase, because whenever we develop any logic in our project, then we have to write the unit test to test that logic, right? So developer is responsible to write the unit test and integration test. So as a Java programmer, you should know what is unit testing and integration testing, and how to write the unit test and integration test to test your code in the projects. So in order to perform unit testing and integration testing, you need to use libraries and frameworks, right? So we have AssertJ library, JUnit framework, Mockito. So these are the frameworks and libraries that we can use to perform unit and integration testing in a Java projects. For example, in order to write the unit test in Java, we should use the JUnit framework, because JUnit framework is the de facto standard to write the unit test cases in Java. Okay, and AssertJ library provides a lot of assertion statements to test the actual result with the expected result. Okay, next we have Mockito framework. Well, Mockito framework is a very popular mocking framework, and whenever we do the unit testing, we have to use a Mockito framework to mock the external dependencies. Okay, so in order to write the unit test cases and integration test cases in your Java project, make sure that you need to know these libraries and the frameworks. Well, next, as a Java programmer, you may familiar with few of the commonly used Java libraries in the Java projects. For example, parsing libraries. Well, sometime in Java project we have requirement to parse the JSON or XML. So you can go ahead and check out the parsing libraries, commonly used parsing libraries. For example, in order to parse the JSON, we can use Jackson or JSON libraries. In order to parse the XML, we can use JAXB APIs. Okay, and logging libraries. Well, log4j and logback is these are the popular logging libraries, so go ahead and check out these logging libraries. And Apache Commons. So Apache Commons libraries are very handy and useful as a utility APIs and utility classes. Okay, so as a programmer, Java programmer, it is good to know these commonly used Java libraries. Alright guys, these are the very important topics, frameworks, tools, databases that you should know to work on Java projects as a Java programmer. Okay, so go ahead and first learn the Java basics and fundamentals, and gradually go ahead and learn the advanced concepts, and go ahead and learn the build tools and then Spring framework modules, especially take a look at the Spring Boot. Okay, and learn the Hibernate framework basics, and go ahead and learn the essential skills like Git and SQL, and get familiar with databases, and get familiar with frameworks and libraries required to develop the unit and integration test in your Java projects, and get familiar with few of the commonly used libraries. Alright, so as a Java beginner, you can go ahead and check out all these topics, frameworks, tools and databases. Okay, so this is a complete package. These are the bare minimum things that I have mentioned here to know as a Java programmer. But in real-time project development, you may use a different framework or tools. Okay, and these are the commonly used Java topics, framework, tools, databases, libraries that I have mentioned over here. Okay, so if you are a beginner and if you want to start your career in Java, then go ahead and learn all these Java topics, tools, frameworks, libraries. Alright, I hope you find this Java roadmap useful. Alright, thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video.